Picture two retirees, same $800,000, same age, 65, same lifestyle. One dies rich, one broke. One dies wealthy at 92, the other goes broke at 78. Same market, same withdrawals. What separates them? The truth is, it's not luck. It's not market timing. It's not some secret asset the rich are hiding. It's a pattern. A quiet, predictable, almost boring pattern that shows up in the data over and over. Here's the thing. The retirement industry has known about this for decades. They just don't lead with it. Because if you actually understood it, you'd stop buying the products they sell you. So let's break down. Why so many retirement accounts hit a wall at exactly age 78? Not 82, not 90, 78. And more importantly, the simple three-bucket framework that keeps you on the right side of that magic number. Why exactly 78 and not later? Stay with me. Let me start with the myth you've heard everywhere. You've heard the 4% rule. Take your nest egg, multiply by 4%, that's your safe withdrawal. Retire on $1 million, spend $40,000 a year, adjust for inflation, and never run out. Simple, comforting, repeated at every kitchen table in America. But here's the origin story that most people don't actually realize. A financial planner named William Bengen ran the numbers back in 1994 using historical US market returns. Going back to 1926, he asked one question. What withdrawal rate would have survived every retirement window? Every single 30-year retirement window in that dataset. The answer he landed on was roughly 4%. Not 5, not 6, 4. That single number quietly shaped every retirement plan sold in America since. Now read that carefully, because most advisors gloss over 3 critical details that quietly change everything about this rule. First, Bengen used a portfolio heavily weighted in US stocks, usually somewhere around 50 to 75% equities. Second, he assumed you'd rebalance mechanically every single year, no matter how terrified the crashing market made you feel. And third, he assumed exactly a 30-year retirement. Not 35 years, not 40, just 30 on the dot. Most people don't realize how fragile that framework becomes when the underlying assumptions shift by even a little bit. Live 5 years longer than planned, retire into a bad decade. Hold too much cash out of pure fear. Any one of those, and the 4% rule quietly stops working exactly when you need it most. But your advisor keeps repeating it, because it's easy to say, easy to sell, and easy to blame later. That's the comfort trap. Set it, forget it, autopilot your retirement, except the autopilot was built for one runway. The rule works until one specific decade breaks it.
And here's the strange part about when it hits. That decade almost always starts right around year 13 of your retirement, and nobody warns you about it. Let's look at the numbers. The Employee Benefit Research Institute, EBRI for short, publishes powerful retiree data. Not projections, not simulations. Actual accounts, actual withdrawals, actual depletion patterns from real Americans living through real retirements. When you cluster the moment retirees hit serious trouble, when balances drop below sustaining the lifestyle, patterns emerge. The median lands somewhere between age 76 and 80. Right in the middle of that band sits age 78. Now do the simple math. The average American retires somewhere around 65. Add 13 years, you get 78. That's not a coincidence, that's a structural fault line. Here's the counterintuitive part most people never see coming.
Most retirees actually see their nominal account balance peak somewhere around age 72, years after they retired. Their portfolio on paper looks bigger than the day they retired. They feel wealthy. They upgrade the car. They take the big trip. They help the grandkids with college. And then, quietly, the curve starts to bend. By 75, withdrawals start outpacing growth. By 77, The balance is falling in absolute dollars and it accelerates. By 78, panic sets in. Most people don't realize how wide the confidence gap really is until too late. Surveys show retirees consistently overestimate how long their money will last by 7 to 10 full years. Their plan says 95. Their account says 78. Why? Because three invisible forces converge in year 13. Let me walk you through them one at a time. Force number 1. Sequence of returns risk. This is the single most misunderstood concept in retirement planning, so let me break it down slowly for you. Imagine two retirees. Both start with exactly $1 million. Both withdraw $50,000 a year adjusted for inflation. Both experience the exact same average return over 25 years, say 7% every single year on average. You'd think they end up in the same place, right? They don't. Not even close. Here's why. Retiree A gets the good years first. Big positive returns in years 1 through 5, then a rough middle. Then average returns near the end. Retiree A dies with more than $1 million still in the account.
Retiree B gets identical returns just in reverse order. Bad markets hit the first 5 years. Same average, flipped. Retiree B is broke by year 17. Same math on paper, opposite reality, and here's exactly why. When you sell shares in a down market to fund your lifestyle, you're locking in losses permanently. You're selling more shares at a lower price for the same 50,000. Those shares can't rejoin the recovery. Compounding, which was supposed to be your friend for 30 years, becomes your enemy for the last 15. The first 5 years of retirement decide almost everything. Statisticians call it the fragility window, with reason. Retire into a boom and you've got a huge cushion. Retire into a downturn, every withdrawal is a wound. Here's the thing most people don't realize. You can't control what the market gives you those first 5 years. You can only control your response. Rigid 4% withdrawals, ignoring the market, guarantee a broken third decade. That's force 1. Sequence risk is only the beginning. Force number 2 hits everyone, even the lucky ones. Force 2, inflation. But not the inflation you're used to hearing about on the news every single month. The government publishes CPI, the Consumer Price Index, tracking the average American's basket of goods and services, housing, food, gas, entertainment. But retirees don't spend like the average American, not even close to that basket. They spend more on the things that inflate fastest: healthcare, prescription drugs, home services, property taxes, and insurance. Economists actually have a separate index for this, called CPI-E, tracking inflation specifically for elderly Americans over 65. And year after year, CPI-E runs roughly 0.3 to 0.6 percentage points higher than regular CPI. Doesn't sound like much, but compound it over 13 years and the retiree's real cost of living climbs meaningfully.
Higher than the number your Social Security cost of living adjustment is actually tracking. Then layer on healthcare specifically. Medical costs for people over 65 have compounded at somewhere between 5 and 7% annually for 2 decades. That's not a typo. 5 to 7%. Meanwhile, the 4% rule assumes spending grows with general inflation, maybe 2 or 3%. Do the compounding. A retiree spending $15,000 on healthcare at 65 is spending closer to $30,000 on healthcare at 78. Same person, same insurance, same body. Double the bill. Here's the hidden Medicare cost most people don't realize. Medicare doesn't cover dental, vision, hearing aids, or long-term care. The gap plans help, but they cost real money. And every single year, those premiums quietly climb even higher. Then comes the big shock. Somewhere around age 77, the long-term care event lands. A fall, a stroke, a dementia diagnosis. Suddenly, you are looking at $8,000 to $12,000 a month for assisted living facilities, or $5,000 to $7,000 monthly for in-home care. The average long-term care event lasts 2 to 3 years. That's a $200,000 line item nobody actually planned for in that neat 4% rule. That's how 78 becomes the cliff. It's not that markets turn on you. It's that biology arrives on schedule.
Now the mid-twist. The real culprit isn't markets. It isn't even inflation. Here's the thing. It's you. Force number 3 is behavior. And this one gets uncomfortable, so let me just say it plainly right now. Most retirees sabotage their own portfolios through completely rational human choices. Not stupid choices, rational human ones. Here's the first behavioral trap, the go-go years. Ages 65 to 72, you're healthy, free, finally with time. So you spend. Cruises, second homes, generous gifts to family. Not reckless spending, just quietly, cheerfully optimistic. And in a good market, it feels totally sustainable, because your account balance just keeps going up. Then the second trap kicks in. A downturn hits. You're 71 and your account drops 15% fast. You panic. You call your advisor. You move a big chunk to cash so you can feel safe. Except now, you've locked in the loss and stripped out the exact assets that would have recovered fastest.
That fear-driven cash hoard quietly drags down your whole portfolio for the entire next decade of retirement. The third trap is legal, not emotional. It's called the Required Minimum Distribution, or RMD for short. Starting at 73, the government forces you to withdraw a percentage from your traditional retirement accounts each year, and you pay taxes on every dollar, whether you need the money or not. The IRS wants its cut. For a lot of retirees, that first RMD is a shock. They just didn't budget for it, honestly. They pull the money, pay the tax, and their withdrawal rate quietly jumps from 4% to 6%. And then there's the fourth trap almost nobody talks about, the widow's tax bracket, and it's brutal. When one spouse dies, statistically one dies 7 years before the other, the survivor files taxes as single. Same income, different brackets. The tax bill on Social Security and RMDs suddenly jumps 20, 30, sometimes 40%. It's a stealth tax hike, landing right in the age 75 to 80 window, exactly where we are standing. Project this 10 years out, and the number gets genuinely ugly. Let me show you real dollars. Meet two archetypes. Both retire at 65 with $800,000. Same portfolios, same starting withdrawal. Archetype A follows the classic script. 4% adjusted for inflation every year, no matter what the market does. Rigid, disciplined. Exactly what the industry teaches. Archetype B runs a dynamic plan with the same withdrawal plus guardrails. If the market drops big, they cut discretionary spending by 10% for a year or two. No drama. If the market runs hot, they take a little extra and rebuild their cash bucket for the next downturn. They also pre-fund a healthcare sinking fund at age 70 and run small Roth conversions to shrink future RMDs. Fast forward to year 13, age 78.
Now, this depends heavily on the sequence of returns they hit. I'm not going to promise you a specific number because anyone who does is quietly lying to your face. But across thousands of Monte Carlo simulations, the pattern is stubbornly the same over and over again. Archetype A, the rigid one, is often down to 200,000 or 300,000, watching the balance shrink terrified. Archetype B, the dynamic one, is often still sitting on $5, $6, sometimes even $700,000. That's a $200,000 gap, bigger than most people's annual salary, sometimes bigger than the house they actually live in, and it comes almost entirely from tiny, boring, unsexy adjustments made along the way. Compounding cuts both ways. A 10% overspend in year 3 doesn't cost 10%. It costs every future year of compounding growth, plus every withdrawal you now make from a smaller base. Little decisions become massive consequences over decades. The gap at 78 is bigger than most salaries. Archetype B isn't smarter or luckier. Archetype B is flexible. Here's the real counter-thesis, and this is where you need to pay attention. Retirement depletion's number one driver isn't markets, it isn't healthcare, it isn't even taxes. It's withdrawal rigidity. Treating a plan built in 1994 like physics.
Studies show retirees using flexible, rules-based withdrawal strategies preserve 150 to 250,000 more over 30 years versus those who mechanically follow the 4% rule. That's the hidden cost of feeling safe. That's why 78 is the statistical inflection point. Not fate, not medicine, the year the rigid plan finally cracks. It runs into three compounding forces at once: sequence, inflation, and behavior. And the wall at 78 breaks. Real safety isn't a fixed rate. Real safety is adaptive. That's real wealth versus just looking wealthy. It's the difference between a retiree who keeps their lifestyle and one who ends up asking kids for help. So, what actually works? Here's the framework. Let's break it down. There are 4 moving pieces. I'll walk you through each one in plain language. Think about which piece you're currently missing right now. Piece number 1, the 3-bucket system.
This is the backbone holding your entire retirement plan together. You split your money into 3 buckets based on when you're actually planning to spend each dollar. Bucket 1 is cash and equivalents, high-yield savings, money market funds, short treasury bills, nothing exotic. It holds 1 to 2 years of your expected living expenses. Not 5 years, not 10, just 2. Its job, pay your bills without ever forcing you to sell stocks in a bad market. Bucket 2 is bonds and stable income. Intermediate bonds, some laddered CDs, dividend-paying assets working together. This bucket holds the next 3 to 7 years of expenses, quietly refilling bucket 1 over time. It gives you something to spend from when the stock market has a genuinely bad year ahead. Bucket 3 is pure growth, stocks mostly. Broad, diversified, boring index funds doing quiet, patient work. It holds everything beyond 7 or 8 years out, not for next month's rent, for later.
Its job is to grow quietly through the second half of retirement, keeping you funded past 78. The whole point of this structure is psychological as much as financial. Here's why that matters most. When markets drop 30% and the news is screaming panic, you look at bucket 1 calmly. You see 2 years of cash sitting right there. You don't have to sell anything. You wait. You let the growth bucket recover on its own schedule. No panic, no forced selling required. That single behavioral shift is worth more than any expense ratio you'll ever chase down or save. Piece number 2, guardrails. This is the flexibility rule that separates archetype B from archetype A directly. Instead of blindly adjusting withdrawals for inflation every year, you actually set 2 clear lines around your portfolio. Upper guardrail. If your portfolio grows past a certain point, you can give yourself a raise. Lower guardrail. If your portfolio falls past a certain point, you trim withdrawals by roughly 10%. 10%, by the way, is a lot easier than most retirees actually think it will feel. 1 fewer restaurant meal a week, delaying a planned trip, or holding off on a car upgrade. Nobody starves. That small trim at the exactly wrong moment saves you $100,000. Piece number 3. Refill the buckets, but only from strength, never ever from weakness or panic. When the growth bucket has a big up year, you take some gains and refill bucket 2. When bucket 2 feels comfortable, you refill bucket 1. That sequencing is really the entire hidden trick. You never sell growth assets in a down year to buy groceries. Almost nobody actually follows this. Their advisors set them on fixed monthly withdrawals, pulling proportionally from everything, good years and bad alike. Piece number 4. A healthcare sinking fund by 70, completely separate from your normal 3 buckets. Between 65 and 70, carve out 50 to 250,000 strictly for medical shocks. You do not touch it for cruises, grandkids, or a new roof. It sits growing quietly, waiting patiently for the health shock at 77 or 78 to eventually land on your household. When it does, you have ammunition. Your growth bucket never has to bleed for the emergency room. And one more thing. In the gap years between retirement and when Social Security fully kicks in later, roughly 65 to 73, you have a rare tax opportunity that most retirees completely and totally miss. Your income is temporarily low. Your tax bracket is temporarily low. This is the moment for Roth conversions. You move chunks of your traditional retirement account into a Roth, paying tax at today's much lower rate. This shrinks your future RMDs. Every dollar converted is a dollar never forced out at 73 later. Never taxed again. Never inflating the widow's bracket that crushes your spouse after you eventually pass away. Done right, Roth conversions during the gap years can be worth 6 figures over a full retirement. So, put it all together. 3 buckets so you never sell into a downturn when markets crash. Guardrails so you flex instead of snap.
Refills from strength so compounding stays firmly on your side. Add a healthcare fund so that 77-year-old medical shock doesn't rip clean through your growth engine entirely. And Roth conversions in your 60s so the taxman doesn't take one extra big bite at 73. That's it. That's the whole framework. It's not exotic, it's not proprietary. It's actually pretty simple stuff. It doesn't require a special account, an expensive advisor, or an insurance product with a 15-page brochure. It requires paying attention, once a year. Maybe twice if you want to be extra thorough about it. Here's the thing most people don't realize about their own retirement, and it's kind of embarrassing, honestly. The average retiree spends more time planning a single vacation than reviewing the money meant to last decades. 30 years of retirement and it gets less structural attention than 1 week booking a beach trip. 2 hours a year sitting down with a spreadsheet or your advisor asking 3 simple questions honestly. Are the buckets balanced? Do I need to trim? Do I need to convert some more Roth money? 2 hours a year is the difference between dying rich at 92 and going broke at 78. One more thing decides if this framework holds. And it's not math. It's discipline when it counts most. Discipline in year 2 when the market is booming and you feel the guardrails are too cautious. Or in year 7 when a downturn hits and the news is telling you to sell everything. The framework only works if you actually follow it when it feels wrong. That's the quiet part. That's why so few retirees make it to 90 with money left. Not because they didn't know, because in the moment they simply didn't act. So back to our 2 retirees from the beginning. Same 800,000, same age 65, same market. One dies rich at 92, one broke at 78.
Now you know the actual difference. It wasn't luck, it wasn't a stock pick, it wasn't a magic advisor. It was structure, it was flexibility, and the willingness to make small, boring adjustments when it felt unnecessary. That's how you stay off the 78-year-old cliff. Not by predicting the market, by designing a smarter plan. A plan that doesn't need to predict the market. If this helps you see retirement differently, one favor. Subscribe to Andy Explains Money. Next up, we're breaking down the real cost of claiming Social Security early. The number at 62 surprises almost everyone, and the specific age most people should actually claim instead. Here's the truth. Most retirees leave $60,000 to $160,000 on the table, just by claiming at the wrong year. That decision, combined with today's lesson, is what truly matters. That separates retirees who thrive from ones who quietly panic.